Hi, good evening, Erev Tov, welcome. My name is Rabbi Gary Pokris. I'm the senior rabbi, one of the rabbis here at Temple Beth Ami, and it is an honor and a privilege to welcome you all here this evening, whether you're joining us in the sanctuary or you're joining us online, for us to be able to host this community conversation between the JCRC, with the JCRC and the superintendent of our public school system, Thomas Taylor, and it really is a beautiful thing to be able to do. Because I'm a rabbi, and because we're in a sanctuary, I cannot help myself but to inflict a little bit of Jewish teaching. So I'm just going to take a moment to share that with you. As I was thinking about what I wanted to share tonight, I was drawn to the book of Job, not because we're living in it. But there's a really unusual teaching that comes out of the book of Job. In fact, there's a word in Hebrew that, to my knowledge, doesn't occur anywhere else in the Bible except in the book of Job. And that word is blima. And so it occurs in a poem, a poetic response that Job's making to his so-called friends who are trying to help him. And he's responding, and he says about God, Tole eretz al blima. He, God, suspends the earth over this thing called blima. And no one knows what it means. Until finally, some rabbis came along in the Talmudic era, and they said, well, maybe it's not one word, maybe it's two words. Beli, which is the Hebrew word for without, and ma, which usually is translated from Hebrew as what. So that makes sense, right? Without what? The earth is suspended by God over without what? And they say when something is without what, that means it is without anything, without putting forth like lots of stuff, holding back. And in the Talmud, according to a rabbi by the name of Ilya, he teaches that the whole world endures only on the merit of those who shebolem, same root, shebolem, belimash, they sound alike, who restrains themselves during an argument. Because God hangs the world upon belima. So restraint is what God is what is supporting the world, according to Job. Why do I share this tonight? Because we live in a moment right now that I can only describe as raw and painful in our kishkis, in our souls. And if you are like me, you are feeling all the feels, intensely, profoundly. And we need to have conversations in moments like this to find a path forward. But I want to urge Shebolem. Let us speak our truths, but restrain ourselves from crossing a line where we become so intense with our emotion that we're no longer able to move the ball forward with what we want to share. This is part of the secret sauce of the rabbinic tradition, to be able to share passionate, differing ideas while also sharing mutual respect. We are in the sanctuary, our sacred place. Let us bring the teaching of Job and of Rabbi Ilya and of our tradition into this place, and together all of us walk forward towards a better future. So thank you so much for being here. And now I'd like to turn things over to the director, the CEO of the JCRC, who also said I should not share this with you because it'll hurt the synagogue's reputation. But he is a member of Temple Beth Ami, and many of us like that. So I just lost 20 members, I know. So Ron, please. Come on.
And when you hear those words, you can see why we've been so proud to be a member of this synagogue with Rabbi Pokris and before him Rabbi Luxemburg, who actually was president of JCRC at the time I was hired, so you can blame that on him. First of all, I do want to thank everybody for joining us here. At last time we just checked, there's 157 people online. And Debbie Ezrin, who is the executive director, CEO, executive director of Temple, said we usually count by 1.5. But I'm going to be conservative. We're not going to blow. So we have we can say conservatively, we have 280 people who are here, and probably more, but we don't want to inflate our numbers. So I do want to thank everybody for whether they're here online or in person. And again, Rabbi Pokris, thank you, and to Debbie and to the entire staff at Beth Ami for hosting this important discussion. I want to thank a few more people, Superintendent Dr. Taylor for his chief of staff, Essie McGuire. Essie, hi, Essie. I knew Essie when she was a county council staffer 25 years ago, and we both didn't know what we were doing. And I want just you to realize that the superintendent of the Montgomery County school system is a very, very busy man. And I also want you to know that whenever we call him, he answers the phone. And he's there for us. Now, you may not like every little thing that happens in the school system, but don't you dare doubt for a moment that there's an incredible, warm, responsive relationship between the Jewish community and MCPS, and I'm validating that, I'm saying it publicly. And that's the truth. So I also want to welcome the school board members who are here. Julie Yang, Carla Silvestri, Laura Stewart. Hey, Laura. Hope have I missed anybody? Okay. Now, I also want to acknowledge that the following council members of Senate Representatives: Andrew Friedson, Evan Glass, and Lorianne Sales. Sorry? No, see, somebody said, bravo. Oh, okay. Wow, that's enthusiasm. That's great. And Delegate Jared Solomon, who is the founder of the Maryland State Jewish Caucus. I also want to thank my colleagues, Tali Cohen from ADL and Lisa Miller, from the Montgomery County Jewish Educators Alliance, as well as our colleagues at the American Jewish Committee in Washington. It's great to work with such wonderful educators and passionate advocates. And I also want to recognize two unsung heroes, and of course she's not sitting, she's standing, Sarah Winkleman and Mandy Books, who are the JCRC, who work day in and day out in the 8 area school systems and with private schools to ensure that Jewish kids and others can go to school in a comfortable environment. Tonight's conversation comes as a difficult time for our community. We've seen a nationwide spike in anti-Semitism since the outbreak of the Iran war, which is on top of an already increased spike of anti-Semitism since October 7th, which is on top of an already spike in anti-Semitism as a result of 10 years ago of polarization in our community and growing hate. So we, the American Jewish community, have gone ahead and suffered verbal and, in many cases, physical attacks. Schools are not immune from this trend. They're simply not. They mirror what's in society. And as I've said, we've seen troubling anti-Semitic incidents since even well before October 7th. The JCRC is deeply engaged in confronting anti-Semitism in our schools. We work with administrators, educators, students, and parents to proactively train staff and to provide students with a broader understanding of their Jewish peers. We have made meaningful progress, but work remains to be done to address problematic curricula, keep personal political beliefs out of the classroom, and prevent bullying and harassment of Jewish students and others. So this is, in a nutshell, the focus of our work, which we will not compromise. Jewish children must feel safe and comfortable expressing their full Jewish identities in school, and their parents must feel safe sending their Jewish students to school. Full stop, no compromise. Before I turn the mic over to my great, amazing colleague and friend, Gila Franklin-Siegel, who's our Chief Operating Officer, and she oversees our education department, and she'll moderate tonight's discussion, I just want to talk about a few housekeeping tips. After an initial icebreaker to get the conversation rolling, the rest of the program will be devoted to questions and answers, with students given first priority, followed by current MCPS parents, and then to community members. So we know that these are serious topics, And I already know from some of the people in the room that we have a lot of diverse opinion and that people are very passionate about this. But I must insist that everyone remains respectful to everyone, that you model civil discourse, especially in this sanctuary. You are in a sanctuary. Our holy scrolls are right here. Please act civilly and respectful to everyone. Anyone who is disruptive or disrespectful will be warned once. The second time, you'll be removed by security, okay? Now, we don't want to go down that negative lane, but I want to say that it's out there, and I want to say we insist on, in our synagogue, maintaining better civil discourse than what is happening in the community at large and in the United States, because we have to be better than that if we want to be able to get along. And we have to return to a time of a lack of not so much polarization, and we have to be able to work together, and we have to model it now, because we want to develop a model for our students to follow. So let's do that tonight, even when we're having a difficult conversation. Now, with that in mind, let's go positive, and let's have a great and productive conversation. And I'll turn it over to Gila.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Ron, and good evening to all of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone who's online. And most of all, thank you to my colleague and friend, Dr. Thomas Taylor. Thank you for being here. Looking forward to a good discussion. So I'm guessing that you probably, when you go to community events night after night, don't have this level of security at every...
No, but I will say this, Ron is hired to come with me to future community events to give that speech ahead of time. I mean, if you can carve out the time, Ron, you're hired for sure. Yeah. But I do recognize the reality of the world that we're living in today and the necessity of needing to make sure that these conversations can happen in safe places, and that as people are feeling fearful and anxious, that they can come to a place knowing that it's going to be safe, and that unfortunately that safety comes from a history of being unsafe because of tragic events.
Oh, yeah, I wish that we didn't have to be here to talk about anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, and I wish that we didn't have to not announce the location of our events until 48 hours beforehand and have security. But this is the world that we are living in right now, and it is the root of so much of the work that JCRC does with MCPS day in and day out. We've been on a long journey, JCRC with MCPS, both under your tenure and your predecessor's tenure. I think it's no secret to anybody in this room or online that MCPS really has struggled with anti-Semitism. Even before October 7th, the incidents of anti-Semitism in the public schools were skyrocketing. And at that time, we really didn't feel we had partners in the school system to work with. Once October 7th happened, the largest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust, the situation was even worsened. And that's the situation you stepped into almost 2 years ago. And I will say that you and I, unfortunately, had the opportunity to work together around 5 minutes after you came back to Montgomery County, because there were anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist vandalism attacks on 6 Montgomery County public schools in heavily Jewish neighborhoods the week before school began. Looking back on it, it's hard to believe that the magnitude of what it was at that time. Parents were really afraid that they were going to send their children to school that Monday morning and see horrific graffiti targeting them. That morning...
Or worse.
Or worse. And that morning, when I was quickly getting ready to run down to Bethesda Elementary School and saying, I'm going to have to reach out to the new superintendent, my phone rang, and that was you. And you were reaching out to me, and that had never happened before. And so, as Ron said, I want to acknowledge that, and acknowledge that when we reach out, you have always been so responsive. And I think that that's not to be minimized because, as I said, we really didn't have partners within Montgomery County Public Schools, and we do now. So much has improved in terms of the collaboration, in terms of the level of awareness and understanding among top administrators and principals as to why anti-Semitism is a real problem, and that when it occurs, it needs to be responded to forcefully. We've had success at JCRC. We had worked on having 2 bills passed by the state of Maryland to mandate training on anti-Semitism and Islamophobia for teachers and for school board members, and we are currently working on getting another bill passed that would require greater transparency in the bias data so that we know exactly how many anti-Semitic incidents are happening versus other kinds of hatred, and we know where they're happening, and it's posted on the school website, on the MCPS website. So I'll make a plug. If you have received our action alert on that bill, please respond. Please take a minute to contact your state legislators and let them know that this is important to you, that it's an important tool in making our school system more transparent, and that will enable us to fight anti-Semitism much more effectively in our school system. So there's been a lot of good things that have happened, and yet, here we are, our JCRC staff, 3 weeks into this war with Iran, and the number of incident reports from local schools has shot up. Our staff has been really stretched to the max, just responding to incidents, many of which are coming from Montgomery County Public Schools. And that's dispiriting. There is a climate that makes Jewish children, many of them, feel wary about identifying themselves as Jews. There is a lack of confidence that Jewish parents have in the school system. We're seeing problems with curriculum. We're seeing problems with on many different fronts. And I appreciate the partnership. I will say sometimes, as I've said to our colleagues and to school board members, that it seems like we're going in circles. So many of these problems keep happening over and over again. And we seem to not yet be at the place where we have made the systemic change that needs to happen so that we stop feeling like we're in Groundhog Day. So with that, you'll be coming up soon on 2 years, and we are at such a difficult moment. I'm wondering if you can, to start our conversation off, just reflect on that, reflect on where you think the school system is doing well on addressing anti-Semitism. What are the problems that you see, and what are thoughts that you have about addressing it?
Oh my. So I'll start by saying it's such a privilege to be here and an honor to join you, and special welcome to our friends who are online as well. There's a lot to talk about in this space. As I'm closing in on a little bit more than a year and a half of being back in Montgomery County, I grew up in Montgomery County. I went to Montgomery County schools. It's the first superintendent to graduate from Montgomery County schools, having gone through the Montgomery County school system. And I think that this is important because the Montgomery County schools, for better and worse, is very different today than it was 25 years ago when I left. There have been great strides in a number of spaces and also some steps back. And I think you're right in saying that anti-Semitism has been an issue that Montgomery County has carried for some time in its schools, and it's manifested in different ways at different times. And the unfortunate piece about today is how overt and how present this is in the average everyday life of kids and adults that are in the school system. Because it's not just our kids, it's also our teachers and our staff. They're experiencing this too. They're seeing it firsthand. They're deeply troubled by it. And I think that everybody is looking for tools on how to address it when it seems like the culture in the world and even in our community is so permissive and not as attuned to addressing it as quickly as possible. So I think our awareness has gotten a lot better. I do. I think our processes have gotten a lot better. But where I'm starting to see some real issues are the consistency and the application of those processes from school to school to school, because we've got 211 campuses with 211 different management approaches to a pretty prescriptive approach to dealing with things. And sometimes there's hits and misses. And then the other piece, which I think is kind of our silent killer, that we probably need to spend a lot more time and attention focused on, is underreporting. Our children and even our staff members may have an encounter, may have an experience that is inherently anti-Semitic, and it goes underreported or not reported at all. And so even though we are collecting hate bias information for the first time in earnest this year, I have a deep feeling that I feel like these numbers are not reflective of our reality, and they're not reflective of the student experience or the adult experience. And this isn't limited to just anti-Semitism, although we'll spend our time talking about that today. Everybody needs to be able to walk into a school and feel safe, welcome, and a part of the school experience. And so whether you are a Jewish student or not, you need to have that sense of safety and security, but you also need to have that sense of welcome, that sense of inclusion as part of that safety portfolio. And I just feel like those interruptions to safety, those interruptions to their experience of feeling welcome are often not said in an actionable way to somebody who can do something about it and make the corrections. And so what ends up happening is really the worst case scenario. It gets worse. And it starts to amplify because it goes unchecked. And somebody who feels like they can say or do something once now has permission to do it again and again and again. And so it means for us, and something that we spend a lot of time talking about, is how do we become more accountable and more vigilant about what's happening in our schools, about the reporting and following up and making sure that there's not just documentation to check a box, but that there's genuine follow-up and repair to the relationships that are damaged, and education that follows to explain why something is totally inappropriate and not okay and hurtful.
I can tell you the issue of underreporting is something that Sarah and I have in mind all the time. Today's only Wednesday, and we've had several searing conversations with Jewish stakeholders within MCPS. And we're painfully aware that even as we're having these conversations and trying to help, that there are probably 10, 15, how many more people who are experiencing the same thing and are not reporting it because of fear or other reasons. We want to turn the program over now to you. We really want the bulk of this to be engagement between yourselves and Dr. Taylor. We are going to start off by giving our students first priority for questions. After that, we'll open the floor to questions from current parents and teachers, employees of MCPS. And after that, we will open it up for community comments. But we really do want to hear from our kids to the extent that there are any students here. My colleagues Mandy Book and Charlotte Barrios will be walking around with microphones.
So while we're waiting for both students to speak up, I do want to thank you for giving up some family time. Yeah, I'm talking to you guys right up here in the front. Sorry, I spotted you early. I do want to thank you for giving up some family time to have this conversation, whether you're sitting at home online or you're here in the sanctuary. It's important to be here and to be a part of the conversation and to share your thoughts. So thank you. And all right, MCPS or non-MCPS students. Oh, you've got one. There was a hand, right? Yeah, right in the back.
Good evening, Dr. Taylor. Thank you so much for taking the time to engage with the community in this way. It's really very meaningful, and it's meaningful for me and Miriam here as well to get a chance to engage with our school boards and community and to really explain what we are going through as MCPS students in this day and age. And I just wanted to start by asking, as somebody who attends Wooten High School and who has seen swastikas drawn, who has heard many anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist, and both those things are very highly connected, phrases in the hallways and classrooms, I cannot share the fact that I'm a Jewish student and I'm an Israeli as well. So I was just wondering, what are you and MCPS as a whole doing to create a culture that actually allows Jewish students to feel comfortable and encouraged to share their identity and culture, rather than afraid to speak out in favor of prejudice against them or actual retaliation?
Thank you so much. What a great question. And thank you for being courageous in speaking up today, even when you don't feel comfortable to do so in another setting. That's not lost on anybody, that you feel comfortable here but not there. And Wooten High School in particular is in the news today for a whole host of reasons. And I think you can look no further than a school's culture and climate to see safety, and safety through the lens of a lot of different dimensions. Physical safety, emotional safety, it's all a contributing factor, and it all boils down, I think, to relationships. So the relationships you have with your peers, what's allowed and not allowed within your peer group, the relationships you have with the adults in your school, what's allowed and not allowed in those relationships and those conversations. That says a lot in terms of what kind of environment you feel safe and supported to maybe take a risk and to share your perspective on something in the moment or in a broader landscape. As a district, I think that there's a lot that we can do in terms of making some recommendations for things that help to improve the culture and climate of a school. I think that there are inherently some schools that we have to invest more energy in than not. Your school in particular was in the news not that long ago for having other hate bias incidents that were well documented and well publicized. Those are equally hurtful and powerful and have impact. And you have to go through a healing process as a part of that, not just get over it and move on. And so I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in your school and in other schools that are kind of going through the same thing. And looking at the school holistically about why is it okay for this to happen and still continue to happen? And I draw it back to that reporting aspect. And why do you as a student not even feel comfortable to even make those reports when you see something with such regularity? So I brought gifts for everybody. And by gifts, because I'm a teacher, I really mean paper. I do have a couple of a stack of copies. Chris, where did we put them? Just so I know. Okay. And the table out front, I actually brought our hate bias protocol for you to take a look at. This is also on our website, but it's a little bit different when you get a copy that you can take with you. And it goes step by step what we're looking for, and in a lot of ways it's like a rubric for assessing how bad a situation is and what type of response we need to make. It's also color-coded. It is a color-coded system, and I think it's a perfectly okay thing for some of our students and even our parents and our staff members to say, look, hey, this thing happened at our school last week. How was that not an orange issue and it was rated yellow? Like, can we revisit this? That's a really productive conversation to have in terms of like how we're responding to things and really kind of leaning on some of the process. So I hope that this is helpful for you. This isn't just for adults. This is for everybody. So thank you.
We've had parents ask us and teachers why, when there's a swastika incident at an elementary school, the police are called, and yet first, why are the police called? And second of all, why there's no intervention in terms of explaining why the swastika being drawn on the wall was bad. Can you speak to that briefly?
Well, I think it's been some time since we've called the police at an elementary school for a swastika, at least a year and a half since we've done that. And that was a change in our protocol. Well, I'm sure you'll correct me, that's fine, at least to my knowledge and how we've responded to things in following this process. It does lean on there being some restorative component afterwards and an education component. If anything, I would say that that's probably the weakest part of this in terms of like where the follow-through goes. Because when you have something that is on our scale color-coded as red, it's the most severe it can possibly be. It means that the impact was really high and the exposure was also really high, like school-wide. It's almost an opportunity for the whole school to stop and take a look at this issue and address the issue as a whole school. And I'm not sure that that happens with the kind of fidelity that we'd like to see.
Students? Do we have any more students? Okay.
Oh, okay. Good evening, Dr. Taylor, or both doctors. Throughout my 3 years as an MCPS middle school student, I have witnessed and personally experienced anti-Semitism many times. From the very beginning, I spoke out against these acts of hatred, but nothing has changed. These past weeks, I witnessed a student laughing at anti-Semitic content on Reels, TikTok, multiple times. One instance, it was a Roblox. It was a Roblox TikTok. It was how to be Jewish in Roblox. And like attack moves, the penny picker, the card swiper. When I spoke up, when I confronted the student about this, she doubled down. How could I be anti-Semitic? I have experienced acts of racism. How could I be anti-Semitic if I've already experienced it? And what bothers me is that kids don't know the intent of the impact of their intent and how the content they're consuming is hurtful and sneakily getting into their minds and making them believe these things. So I want to say that the way that MCPS is trying to educate kids on what Judaism is and how anti-Semitism is bad, I want to say they're doing a great job. But this isn't the 1990s. So, contrary to what you said, Mr. Superintendent, I believe that the prescriptive teachings and methods are part of the issue, because it's not the way that the over 200 campuses are teaching them. It's how it's their methods and kids believe other things. And what's been happening in all, it's not working. And students aren't realizing the content they consume is anti-Semitic. Another thing I want to address is yeah, that's it. Thank you.
First things first, thank you so much for being brave to say something. Not to be repetitive, I do want to add one thing that I thought was really, really insightful and really important that we haven't invested a lot of time and energy into, but need to. We talk an awful lot about training that we do for staff, in particular that we focus on for leaders, but there is not a whole lot in the space that's meaningful and useful for students. And so explaining to students in detail and even in nuanced detail and having real conversations about what that looks like would be a huge step in the right direction. One of the things that I think that I've seen that's been very positive is some of the work that JCRC has done in neighboring school districts like Fairfax, where I would lift up that relationship and the relationship that some of our neighboring districts have with ADL and other organizations that are supporting a response to hate bias just in general, is mechanisms and tools to spot and to think about the words that we choose and to make sure that everybody feels valued. The bottom line, I think we're all here tonight because we share this one really, really important belief, that our kids, age 18 and under, in Montgomery County represent about 20% of the population, but 100% of our future. So from an investment standpoint, that's a pretty great investment. And so to the extent that our last speaker mentioned, I think is really important, that that's where probably the most fruitful investment can be in terms of education. Thank you.
If we don't have any more students, we're going to go on to parents. Oh, is there another student? I apologize.
First of all, thank you again so much for being here. It really speaks volumes, and I think I can speak for all the students that it really means a lot. I go to Montgomery Blair, and I want to ask in regard to the trainings that you were describing specifically. The two issues that I feel like are very prevalent in my life are in regard to anti-Zionism. I feel like anti-Zionist comments are just made like thoughtlessly. I don't think anyone realizes what they're saying, and it's hard to witness every day, like teachers and peers just making comments that feel very targeted. And the other thing that I'd like to discuss is the Holocaust. My grandfather is a Holocaust survivor, and it's very close to me. It's always felt very personal, and I think that Holocaust education is not where it should be, especially now. Yeah, it's hard to watch people just making references that are not correct, that are not sensitive, and I was just kind of wondering what, if there are any like specific trainings or things that are implemented to both staff and also lessons to students to potentially lessen these issues.
Two really, really important topics. Thank you so much. Great job. First important topic is training and professional learning or even student learning. So students, you may be surprised to learn this, but your teachers also take online modules for their training. They are not amazing. Yes, the modules, not the teachers. Yes, important distinction. And so the modules that you guys take, I promise you, are also not amazing. And, you know, for a teaching and learning organization, we should probably be in the amazing teaching and learning business. So, yeah, we can do better, we should do better, and I think that they are designed with the intent of compliance, not with the intent of understanding. And so I think that when we revisit what training should look like, I think we need to revisit it with the expectation that we're trying to achieve something. And compliance isn't what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve some level of proficiency or some level of understanding versus just trying to check a box. So what that means, and this is the downside, I think that there probably needs to be some kind of assessment that's tied to the training that we're doing to see if people are actually learning what we think that they're learning as a result of that. And I don't mean a multiple choice quiz at the end of something. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement in that space. And I think that it is worth it for us to make those kind of investments because I think that they translate into helping people say fewer careless things. Unfortunately, teenagers are going to continue to say careless things. They are going to continue to do careless things. That doesn't mean that we stop or use that as an excuse for bad behavior, but it is a reason for us to intervene and to create an opportunity for them to learn from their mistakes. Okay, second issue, which is really important to me because I'm a former social studies teacher. And one of my favorite things to teach was later world history or American history, my absolute favorites. I actually really liked civil rights movement, but before that, World War II in particular, and the Holocaust is part of that because it is such a critical part of understanding a big piece of why the world is the way it is today and understanding the cultural ramifications that came from the Holocaust. I see that my compatriot Chris Cram actually passed out a sheet to folks, and if you didn't get one, we will also have this online. But it's just a brief snapshot of some of the things that we have in our curriculum to address the Jewish experience and to make this as a part of our curriculum in a meaningful way. Does that mean that this is perfect? No. I actually think that there's a lot of room for improvement, both in making the rigor a little bit more meaningful. I don't know about you, but when I first read Night, it was like in middle school, not in high school. I think that there is some definite room for improvement on what we do curricular-wise. I will say that this is a diverse community, and we are trying very hard to fit a lot of different perspectives in a lot of different communities so that they're seen in our curriculum. And you have to be seen in the curriculum. You have to see yourself, you have to see your ancestry, you have to make meaningful connections to the curriculum, and it has to be robust. I think we're a little light on the robust part. And so if there's improvements to make, I think that we could, instead of going a mile wide and an inch deep, maybe we start by making it 3 inches deep and then eventually a foot deep, and maybe expand how wide we go in the future as well. But I think there's room for improvement in that space. But I wanted you to have a copy of kind of just a snapshot of where we are, the books that we're reading, the content that we're covering, when we're covering it, how we're covering it. I think that those things are important. This is not an exhaustive list, but it is a good snapshot.
I think folks may be interested to know that recently JCRC and American Jewish Committee teamed up together to do a training for the English department heads of all the high schools in Montgomery County Public Schools about how to teach night during this difficult time. I will add that I initially felt very sad that that kind of training was even necessary for one of the great, great works of memoir of the 20th century. But here we are. So we were glad to have the opportunity to be able to work with teachers on that. I believe we're ready to move to parents and teachers. And we've got lots of hands, so.
I'll make my answer shorter too so we can get to everybody, because I know we got limited time.
Oh, great. Do I have to stand up? I have to hold the mic. You have to hold the mic? Yeah. I'm not used to that. Should I stand up? Is that easier for you? Hi, my name is Cantor Rebecca Robbins. I am an MCPS parent. My son is in 4th grade at the most diverse elementary school in Montgomery County, Bayard Rustin Elementary School. Woohoo. And I am also the Director of Religious Education at Temple Sinai in Washington, D.C., where 40% of my students are MCPS students. So I'm coming with 2 hats on, and I'm going to push you a little bit on curriculum. Right now, as a parent, I'm deeply entrenched in the experience of the Amplify curriculum with my son, and it has been a really mostly positive experience of ELA learning through a lens of 100 other resources. I, for one, am very grateful that we left Benchmark behind, and he's not learning ELA standards through the story of corn, which is like part of the 5th grade Benchmark curriculum, if you're unfamiliar. Right? It's for real. I am concerned, and I know other parents across the country where Amplify is being used have shared some of this concern, so I feel okay bringing it in this place, that Amplify, in its intent to use real stories and tell the great experiences of American world history, civilization, has several units starting in the earliest grades and woven through the intermediate grades that are the teaching more of religion than ELA. So I specifically, a couple of examples that we have come home to my house are learning about the rise of Jesus during the Holy Roman Empire, which is a totally reasonable thing to talk about, but we didn't learn about the rise of the Pharisees at the same time. The Jesus movement was part of a movement of like multiple faith traditions where everyone was kind of like, Holy Roman Empire doesn't feel good for us. So we were gonna do our own thing. That feels like a missing piece. And this year he learned about the Islamic Caliphate, which is an amazing thing to learn, like this huge, impressive journey. And he learned about the Crusades and also Muhammad's childhood, which is a little bit out of the box for kind of looking at what kind of this moment is. I think how you answered about Holocaust is important to me. My son is in 4th grade. We just read Night. No, I'm kidding. We read Number of the Stars, right? Like Anne Frank, he's already finished. I understand our sensitivity to developmentally appropriate curriculum and desire our children grow up in a school district that is responding to the diversity of communities, but maybe in that diversity, we're not being sensitive enough to where we're teaching something by accident, which is the opposite of not teaching it at all. Other districts have looked at Amplify through different lenses and pulled it apart. We don't do that in Montgomery County because we use a set of standard assessments for every teacher. I believe that Montgomery County public school teachers are better than that. I watch them every day do incredible work, and I think we can rely on them a little bit more to use their educational judgment in the classroom so that they don't need to use a standard assessment for a curriculum, and we can actually present our students with material that's relevant. I wonder what you think.
Yeah, your faith in the MCPS teachers is well placed. That's what I think. I think it's well placed. We've seen some very troubling stuff, and I would say to the extent that there are concerns, we are trying to flag them as quickly and proactively as we can, but if you see something, please flag it too and say, please review. I think that... How would I do that? Like right now I call Sarah. Yeah. She doesn't listen to me. Perfect.
That's a good start.
She's got us on speed dial. And as previously stated, we answer because this is important. And we're having a new experience with Amplify and CKLA. It's our first full year this past year. So this is our second year. There's definitely a lot that we caught last year that we were like, okay, well, we could do this differently, and made some modifications, and I think we're going to continue to do that. I think your point about assessment is well received and definitely worth some further exploration. So thank you. That's awesome.
I should add that Sarah and I have had 2 meetings already with MCPS about the Amplify curriculum, and we will continue to be really pressing on this because we have received so many complaints coming into our office.
Let's try over here.
Hi. We already met, but I'm Jody Price. I'm an MCPS parent, but I'm also a JCRC board member, and I'm the Maryland chair on the education committee here. So work closely with JCRC in engaging efforts supporting schools, addressing anti-Semitism through education and training. And you touched on Fairfax County a little bit, so I want to expand on that. In January, Fairfax County Public Schools mandated anti-Semitism training for all secondary social studies teachers, and JCRC helped lead a workshop that reached over 700 educators. Given that MCPS serves a larger Jewish student population, and in light that Maryland legislation now is requiring anti-Semitism training to all school employees, I'm just wondering, when will this be implemented in MCPS, and what's the plan for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So having spent 25 years in the Virginia public school system and coming back home to Maryland and Montgomery County, there are some very significant differences in the speed in which certain things can come to pass. I'll echo a frustration with you and ask for your help. We have an evaluation system for our employees that is 20 plus years old. It's actually pretty good. It has a lot of elements that you would want to see as part of our employee appraisal system, but it's also missing a couple of things. And one of the things that it's missing is the expectation of cultural competence. And beyond cultural competence, cultural proficiency. And so as a part of that, it is hard if we do not expect, as part of their evaluation system, that they have a certain level of proficiency in a given area for there to be training with the kind of fidelity that would have the kind of impact that our students are looking for. I think that this is absolutely essential. And not just because of a state mandate, but because of what it means for creating the relationships, creating the culture and climate that our kids really need in order to thrive. There needs to be that relationship and that connection between them and the adults that are in that space. And if they don't have a level of proficiency built on a level of competence and anti-Semitism, as well as other hate bias issues, it makes it very hard for us to make progress. I really think that these are the two things that are going to give us the most leverage in making progress, in making Montgomery County a really welcoming and safe learning environment, is how good our evaluation system is at measuring cultural proficiency and what the accountability structures look like tied to that, and then how good the training is that supports that. So for us, this is urgent. Mobilizing 30,000 employees to do that is a little tricky, but it's a top priority. It's a must do. And for us, it's top of the agenda.
I have to say, honestly, that at JCRC, we've encountered significant roadblocks in trying to get our training programs in, and we offer them free of charge. We just had the feedback from the Fairfax County training, which was overwhelmingly positive. So what is the exact roadblock? Why can't teachers just be receiving anti-Semitism training?
So we do have it available, and it does exist. But I think that there's the missing piece of this is kind of tying it all together. So I think that there is definitely the interest, the desire, the need, and we're there. We're going to do it. It's not an issue, and it's not just anti-Semitism either. It's a whole host of other things that we also need to lift up in making sure that our staff has a better understanding of the students that they're serving. Mm-hmm. It's really what it boils down to. And so with that, I think that the through line and kind of if there is a roadblock, it's like, can we get this to dovetail in a really meaningful way with how we assess the performance of our staff? And it's not just teachers too, by the way. It's the total school experience. Because our kids can encounter anti-Semitism and can encounter hate bias, not just in the classroom. This can happen in the hallway. This can happen on the bus. This can happen in other spaces, out on the practice field. It's really incumbent on us to have a much, much broader lens than just what happens in the classroom. And here's the good news. As previously stated, having your faith in MCPS teachers is a great place to put your faith because there's the willingness and there's the interest and there's the support, but we really do have to have a bigger lens.
Okay. What? Okay, but we need people to be respectful of the space, so I'm going to ask Charlotte and Mandy to continue doing what they're doing. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's go. Okay. Okay, well, I think Mandy was about to call on somebody, so let's have Mandy go forward. And we will hear what you have to say.
Hi, I'm Lisa Miller. I'm a co-leader of the Montgomery County Jewish Educators Alliance, and I'm also a teacher, a staff development teacher at Pinecrest Elementary. Hi, I'm so glad you're joining us tonight.
Good to see you.
I have a question regarding International Night events. In spite of JCRC, AJC, and ADL's best efforts to provide guidance to MCPS on how to make Jewish students feel safe and welcomed at International Night, the guidance consistently appears to not reach the schools or fall on deaf ears, resulting in incidents like the one at Olney Elementary School, which I'm sure many of us and you are familiar with. These are unfortunately common. They're common. Would MCPS be willing to work with JCRC and AJC to issue district-wide policies and procedures for international nights to ensure they are safe and welcoming for all students, staff, and families?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to bring everybody up to speed in case you are like, what's going on? What are they talking about? Just last week at Olney Elementary School, we had a PTA-sponsored international night, and there was a display that had some political components to it. And you know, regardless of your opinion on any one particular issue, that's maybe not the space for an elementary school PTA night to have political anything. And you know, there's definitely a limited open forum for a whole host of people to share their thoughts and opinions about things. But a PTA culture night is not really the right venue for that. So I think it's important to take a look at how we are assessing a few things. And one of the things that we are looking at is in order for a kid to feel welcome in a school, their identity can't be threatened. And so we're looking at the response to that. and the impact measured against the intent as to what might have happened. I think the guidance is great. I absolutely think that better guidance needs to be shared. And unfortunately, I don't think it needs to be shared with just the school, but also third-party organizations who may be sponsoring things at schools. So I think that there's often sometimes a disconnect when there's shared ownership over an event and maybe not one owner of an event. Not an excuse. Definitely needs to be tightened up and definitely needs to be better. Yeah. The consistency piece, I think, is
We can
maybe
take
our
the parents,
biggest
the gentleman's
hurdle.
question,
Yep.
and then we're going to open it up to everybody, parents and community members and
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, and I really appreciate you coming because I've been trying to reach out to you for 2 months. There is an incident. I'm a parent for 3 kids in Beverly Farms. Used to be in Beverly Farms. Had an anti-Semitic incident there. Now 2 students in Hoover. There was an incident, anti-Semitic incidents 2 months ago. Reached out, was ignored several emails. Public complaint form was ignored, several emails, got a meeting with the principal, Dr. Kim, Mrs. Chow. 10 days later, they said they will follow up, did not follow up. I escalated it, had a meeting with your faculty members, Elizabeth, that should be here, and Ellen. We met last week, they told me I'll get an answer. 3 days later, still no answer. Being completely ignored. Student in that school, he's saying he admires Hitler, demonstrate active narratives. He sent naked pictures of himself. He was kicked out from several students' chat groups. No one does anything. They tied everything up, say nothing happened, all good. We handle it, we cannot share with you. Things going on. Then yesterday, another incident. Another kid admires Hitler. Hitler should have ended the job. Hitler is a great leader. Assistant principal says, well, it was out of context. He didn't mean that. They just talk about leaders. It's fine, nothing to be worried about. So you say no incidents for 1.5 years, swastikas. I can tell you it happens every week. The fact that the faculty
Oh, no, I know it
members,
happens every week.
the fact that faculty members don't get the police involved, don't escalate, try to tie everything under the rug, and ignore completely Title VI, ignore completely that Jewish is not just a religion, it's also a race. And as an Israeli, as Jewish, as American citizen, I'm fully aware of all the rights. And I was speaking to Elizabeth, I don't know if she's here or not, but other than go lawyer up and start placing lawsuits against MCPS and individuals who cover things, my question to you is what you recommend? Because educating teachers and taking no actions against students and no actions against teachers who hide things and don't surface things until things escalate, like it happened in Wooten High School a few months ago, I don't wait for my kids to be a victim. So my only option is next is to lawyer up. And my question to you is, what do you recommend to do before I do?
I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for coming. Yeah, please give him a round of applause. Gosh, I hope that that's an irregular experience and not a normal experience. So a couple of things. First off, you won't get to leave tonight without us pinning you down and getting some contact information and some other things, because I'd like to learn a little bit more about the situation. A common thing that is very frustrating, and it's frustrating for a lot of folks and not just related to anti-Semitic issues, but anytime that there's some kind of corrective action that needs to take place, whether it's for a kid or whether it's for an adult, is we don't disclose what ends up happening. We don't. So if a kid gets suspended from school because of something that they did in school, we don't broadcast that, we don't announce that, we don't publicize that, and that information is protected by the Family Educational Privacy Rights Act. And we wouldn't share that information with anyone, including your child. We wouldn't share that about your kid's experience either. Similarly, with personnel issues, if we have a personnel correction, we don't broadcast that. We don't say, yes, this is the long list of teachers that we've corrected behavior with today. We don't do that. So it can be really unsatisfying at many points in like, what on earth are they doing? How are they not tying this up? So the frustrating piece, and I think that's worth the follow-up and the piece that we'll follow up with you on specifically, is to find out some process details about what parts of the process were followed in terms of the student code of conduct, what parts of the process were followed in terms of staff. But I got to tell you, just based on what you're saying, without knowing anything else and without knowing the other side of the conversation or what the administrators or teachers take on any of this is, that's an abnormally long period of time to just even wait for a response. So I just appreciate it, and we will have an individual conversation, because I'm just sorry that you've had that experience, because I can't, just listening to you, I can't even imagine context like what that could even be that would make any of that okay. It's not.
Mandy?
Hi, thank you. Yes, you hold. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Glad you're still good. I'm Jillian Copeland. We've met before, had a coffee.
Yep.
I am an MCPS alum, as you are. Had a son who went through the school system, also taught and worked at the Board of Ed. I was in Montgomery County Public Schools for a decade before I founded the Diener School 20 years ago. Also Main Street Connect, which is a local nonprofit, yay, I see the, in Rockville. And I know a lot of the amazing leaders and educators here, and thank you all for your service and for being here, especially for you to be here with us tonight, Thomas. I'm here just like everyone else out of fear and worry. I think those were the two words that you used in the beginning of your comments. And really concerned about the incidents and the occurrences and the numbers, reported or not reported, the lack of accountability for both students and educators for not doing the right thing. And I'm also looking at some of the information that you gave us, and as an educator, I think we all know that prevention and being proactive is the best way to do it. If we get to yellow, orange, red, we're already in trouble, right? So I think there's a relearning, kind of an unraveling that needs to happen, and whether that's through the curriculum, whether it's through staff education, whether it's through forums like this where we are all able to discuss respectfully what needs to happen. I got involved with JCRC about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, that's it. I'm so blown away, impressed by what they do and how they do it. And I'm getting to the questions, so I'm sorry, context is long. I have been a volunteer in their program. I see just from my own eyes and what I'm witnessing, the impact that just an hour of the student-to-student program or the Holocaust Speakers Bureau, what that does, the impact that it has, and also, by the way, matches this decade-long longitudinal data that they have, right? And my question for you, and Gila brought it up already, but I'm going to bring it up again and push you on it a little bit, and I'm going to follow up. My question is, why aren't we doing this in every school every day? Because if we start doing this, that yellow-red is not going to happen. So instead of the focus on the consequence, which I'm not even sure there are many consequences, as you know, let's focus on the prevention and the proaction. And so my question is, all these other counties are doing this, which is great, but I live here, and I care about the students here, and I care about the 20% that's our future. And I don't want to talk about it anymore. We are talking a lot. And I am in the conversations, and we are talking a lot. And as Rachel Goldberg-Pullen said, you all probably know this, right? It's not what we see, we think, we believe. It's what we do. And it is time to do. And I know you haven't been here that long, and I know that anti-Semitism is on your radar from the beginning because you told me it's one of your top 3 priorities, and I appreciate it so much. It is now the time to do. So if you could make this commitment that we could bring the student-to-student program, if we can bring the Holocaust Bureau speakers in, if we can educate the students, if we can educate the teachers. And again, I don't know what the barrier is, and I didn't get it from your answer, why we're not in there every day. It's a free program that we are all willing to facilitate and volunteer with and be a part of, and we know it's impactful. We know it is. So can you commit to us that we are going to bring this program in and we are going to educate these kids?
Just real quick, if you don't know much about Jillian's work in particular at Main Street, it's phenomenal and really a gift to the community. I'm going to give you a hard maybe, and I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to put out the rationale and the connection as to the barrier. I want it to not just be a thing that we do, or worse, one more thing that we do. I want it to be connected and seamless to everything that we do, and there to be accountability that's tied into it. I'm going to say something that's going to come across very candid, and I hope that it lands with the intention in which I'm trying to say it. We've gotten really soft in Montgomery County. Soft about a lot of things. Soft about academics, soft about expectations, soft about follow-through, soft about accountability, and it's hurt us in really, really significant ways. And I think, unfortunately, the results speak for themselves. And we need to swing the pendulum back in the other direction a little bit and not get hard for the sake of being hard, but be hard on our expectations and lift our kids up. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. The beautiful thing about the children that are in this community is that they will rise to meet the expectations that we set. And when we set the expectations low, good news, they meet those. When we set the expectations a little bit higher, good news, they meet those. And when we set them even higher, good news, they meet those. So we owe it to them, and we owe it to the community and to each other to make sure that we have the supports in place so that they can meet those expectations, but that we need to start setting higher expectations for the kids.
How are
And
we doing on
ourselves.
time?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got at least two, if not three more questions.
Very tall hand right here in the front. Yeah. She's been waiting so hard.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I am a parent of a student in Montgomery County school system, and I'm here on her behalf. And I want to just quickly go over what happened to her. She was at North Bethesda during the October 7th issue. She had a friend who then asked her to join an Islam group. She said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm Jewish." She'd never said that before. She'd never stated out loud what religion she was. She thought that would be the end of it. The next thing she knew, this friend posted on TikTok that she hated my daughter, and my daughter was a genocide supporter, okay? And there were tons of likes to that post, and because of that, and this girl was pretty influential in the school, my daughter lost all her friends. Okay, so that was bad. So I went to meet with the assistant principal. I brought the TikTok, the snapshot of TikTok to show it said this, and it was on the school property. That she did this TikTok, and this is what the assistant principal said to me. She said, "Sometimes girls get into arguments and make up a few weeks later." Okay. I was floored by that, and I thought, maybe she just didn't even know what a genocide supporter meant in this context. I met with her several more times. I begged, I pleaded. I wanted to talk to the parents of this student. I wanted to know what happened, what were the consequences for this student. I wasn't allowed to know. I do know that she was never suspended. I do know that. And So my daughter, for the rest of the year, was a formerly very happy kid, got increasingly and increasingly depressed by all her friends turning away from her. And I was beside myself, and I connected with an advocate, many of you know, Stacy, and that was the only way I got any traction to get my daughter out of this horrible situation and get her into Tilden, just move her out of this situation. But that took about 7 months, okay? And so she really spiraled, and it was a really hard time for our family. Let's see. It happened. So she was fine at Tilden. Everything was great, and then she went on this year to WJ, and had a completely separate anti-Semitic harassment occur. And now she's at a different school. Okay, so my question is for her. This is her question, actually. Her question is, Mom, I don't get it. We learn a lot about civil rights. I read so many books on civil rights, and I want to say that I am all for that, and I believe highly in all students learning about civil rights to the maximum extent. Okay? But she says, how come I've never had to read anything about the Holocaust? And nobody has, okay? And so my question is, for her, I see this, and I see that it says, asterisk, please note that these texts are not required, but are choices within a unit. Okay, so my question is, some of these, I looked down, The Book Thief, great book, Anne Frank, of course, Night, of course. I've read what I think is a great book is The Librarian of Auschwitz. Oh, yeah, it's a good one. Very impactful. Really good. Okay, so I'm wondering why, if these kids are required, have so many books on civil rights that are required, and a lot of them are historical fiction, why is not one book required on the Holocaust?
Yeah, great question. First, let me say how very sorry I am that you've had the experience that you've had. That's just horrible. And we invest a lot in the school system in trying to reduce the stress of making just even transitions between elementary school to middle school and middle school to high school. And that's when it's predictable. But when you have something that's not predictable, or you have something that's abrupt and it's tied to a traumatic event, very difficult. I'm sorry that your family has had to go through that. You bring up a really good question, but it's got a bigger answer. The bigger answer is this: why aren't we having a requirement to read more books? Like, that's really maybe the bigger answer. Because I don't think it's just one genre of book that's emphasized more than others, but rather a requirement to read books, and why aren't some of those required books?
I truly believe that if kids in school were required to read just one of these books, okay, just one, we wouldn't need to.
Oh, it'd help. Yeah. So for those online who are listening and didn't hear that because there wasn't a mic, she made the suggestion that if everybody was expected to read just one of the books on the curriculum list, and it wasn't optional, but it was a requirement, we would need the security a lot less. I think you're probably right. It's a good impetus for change. So thank you.
I think we have time for 2 more questions, and I want to take them together.
And if you don't get a chance to ask a question, don't fret. Pretty easy to find via the internet, and we've also got a couple of folks here today that can pass out some cards and collect some information and hear from you in a different venue. But we're glad that you're here nonetheless. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Taylor, Gila. Good to see you again. Good to see you from last night talking about renters' rights. My name is Matt Losak. I'm the co-founder of the Renters Alliance. But tonight I'm a community member, and I'm running at large for county council, and deeply concerned about anti-Semitism in our community. as a victim of it as a child, in college, in my professional career, and as a student of it. My concern is defining what the Montgomery County Public Schools views as anti-Semitism. People have talked about children being accused of participating in genocide, but if we believe that Israel is committing a genocide, then where does the information go to object to that? Obviously, I don't believe Israel is committing a genocide, but if it's accepted among the faculty or among a good portion of the students, then where does anti-Semitism begin and how do you object to it? If Israel is an apartheid state, which I don't believe, and I worked and lived in Southern Africa during the peak of apartheid, and I can tell you what apartheid is, but if people believe that Israel is an apartheid state and they accuse Jewish students or Israeli students of being racist, where does criticism begin and anti-Semitism begin? How do you address it? How do you define it? When I was in school, if you used a racist term against another student, you were immediately punished. And yet some of these things are talked about as though it's common knowledge.
Great question. And so I am here to answer. I look like you were about to pass the mic, but
We have
just,
one
I
more.
thought I was going to take two, and then you could answer.
Oh,
Kayla,
okay,
we
got
have
it.
one more student who wants to ask a question.
oh,
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. I was originally not going to speak, but I was listening to you talk about the Holocaust and your answers, and I was kind of thinking that I feel like you weren't really answering the question or like saying like if you would like put like books in or anything or like talk about it. I feel like you're talking about like saying stuff about like all forms of hate speech when I think this is mostly supposed to be about anti-Semitism.
Yep. So let me clarify, and thank you for pointing that out. We are absolutely committed to teaching the Holocaust. I am a social studies teacher at heart. This is a passion of mine personally, but I also know that the Holocaust can illuminate, in particular, not just one segment of one part of world and American history, but also really explain quite a bit about the world today and is an essential part of what instruction needs to look like. So thank you for elevating that. Yes, you're right that the conversation today is largely about anti-Semitism, but I don't want you to lose connection to other hates that are happening in our community and how that's important. When we look at hate bias, our number one hate bias issue that we contend with in MCPS, at least that's reported, and I want to acknowledge up front that there's gross underreporting, is anti-Black hate bias. That's number one. It's number one. And number two is anti-Semitism. It's not far behind. Both require tremendous amount of attention, but I think it's important to note that we have hate that's manifesting in lots of different ways, and that it's, as long as that's present, it's gonna be something like we can't stamp out hate in one corner of our community and tolerate it in another and be okay with that. We really have to be better than that and focused on a much wider lens. So with that, how on earth do we define anti-Semitism? And I want to make sure I'm reading because I want to be precise. There is definitely wide disagreement over, and I'll call it out specifically, there might even be disagreement in this room over whether or not the IRA definition of anti-Semitism should rule the day and be the defining document. I think that there's a lot of value in that, and trying to find a clear definition that makes sense to a lot of people. We have different needs than maybe a congregation might have in terms of how we look at things needs to be more operationalized. So even though we may lean on definitions like IRA or from the Holocaust Museum or from other places, we are looking at things largely through an operational lens. And as we're defining other hate biases, we are also equally looking at things through the operational lens. So in this case, we're looking at hate bias that's targeting Jewish identity, religion, or ancestry. And so our litmus test is really simple. Is the student or adult being targeted because of their identity? Is the behavior harmful or disruptive, or harmful and disruptive? Does it require reporting and response? What type of reporting and response? So there is a litmus test that we're using. It's on the sheet that we passed out as part of our hate bias protocol. I think it's important to familiarize yourself with at least our process for reviewing. It's not perfect. Interestingly enough, when the rabbi started and opened with the book of Job, I thought he was making reference to the school board member experience during boundary studies. And the reality is that it's important to know the perspective. And our perspective, at least when addressing this element of our definition of anti-Semitism in the operational lens of correction, that's what we're using, that's the litmus test that we're using, and that's what our response looks like, imperfect as it may be.
We are approaching the end of our program, but I want to hasten to add that this is not the end of our discussion. Tonight wasn't the beginning of our discussion, and it's not the end. I want to thank Dr. Taylor so much and all of his colleagues at MCPS for making themselves available and for working with us and picking up the phone all the time, even though when my name shows up on your caller ID, that it means there's a problem. I want to encourage everybody, please, if you are having a challenge with your child or if you're an employee, please reach out to the JCRC. Sarah, wave your hand again. That's the wonderful Sarah Winkleman, who is our Director of Education Programs and Services. Reach out to me. Our email addresses are on the JCRC website. We want to be there for you. And I appreciate the fact that the staff is here and will...
Can I do a quick introduction of somebody who's
Absolutely.
new to my team? Really quick. Keith Sutton, who's sitting here in the front row and has a gorgeous tie on. You have to stand up, Keith. He's brand new to our team. And Keith, part of his role, he's our director of system-wide equity, and part of his role is to be kind of like the governor over the hate bias process. So he is the person who supervises not necessarily every investigation or every response, but is definitely in charge of the process. And as we, through the continuous improvement mindset of trying to make continuous improvements every year, and as we make tweaks around the edges, him and his colleagues and his office largely take that responsibility. So it's important for you to know him and make the connection to who that is.
And we look forward to working with you. And welcome to DC from North Carolina. So with that, I'm going to close our program. Thank you all for being with us tonight, and thank you to everybody online.